Mercedes came into the 2022 season as favorites, and deservingly so, as they were the defending Constructors' champion from the year previous. But the team's W13 quickly dismantled those expectations once the lights went out at the season opener in Bahrain, where the team lucked into a podium finish after both Red Bulls had DNF'd. And throughout the season, the team has had to experiment on the fly to see which setup works for each track, which culminated in arguably the team's best outing in Sao Paulo, where they finished with a 1-2 result. But the Formula One gods would bring the Silver Arrows back down to their knees this past weekend at the season finale in Abu Dhabi, where it seemed like the team was back at square one with just how far off the pace they were compared to the Red Bulls and Ferraris. So, has the team really figured it out yet? Or will Mercedes fans have to manage their expectations yet again for next year? Well, let's talk about it. But before we do, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on our latest uploads. Now that's out of the way, let's get started. As I mentioned in the intro, Mercedes was humbled yet again at the recent Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, where Lewis Hamilton DNF'd from the race and George Russell was stuck in no man's land and finished P5. After the race, George Russell would describe the team's performance as, "I think it's a bit of a reality check for all of us," he said when asked by motorsport.com after his race. And very much needed, because we still recognize that we've got a lot to do if we want to fight with Red Bull next season. Clearly, we have a car with a huge amount of potential, but unfortunately that performance window is far too narrow, and those performance swings we've seen from the highs of Budapest, Brazil, Mexico, Singapore, comparing to the likes of here, Monza, Spa, are just far too vast. The team's porpoising problems resurfaced in Abu Dhabi, a problem that the team thought they had dealt with. I think we weren't the only team to have experienced a bit of porpoising in this year. The changes the FIA are making with the raised floor edge are going to be an improvement in that regard. It definitely adds quite a lot of fatigue. I forgot what it was like to drive with the car bouncing around through the corners down the straight a little bit. So I'll be happy if I turn up to Bahrain next year with none of that. Team boss Toto Wolff would also comment on the team's performance and say, "We were third quickest behind Red Bull and Ferrari, with one breaking down and one running out of tires. It's a precise summary of the season, and here we are. I think we cooked the tires on the first few laps. We attacked strong, the car seemed to be really good, and then the front right just gave up. So maybe that's something we should have predicted. We knew Abu Dhabi would be a difficult one for the car, so at least the correlation is good. And Brazil was just spectacular from beginning to end with the 1-2, so at least we ticked the box with a race win." But amid a challenging finish to the season, Toto would highlight the progress the team has made and explains why this challenging season will set them up for a better year in 2023. First of all, we have to put these cars in reception at our factories in Brackley and in Brixworth to remind us every single day of how difficult it can be. They know, everyone who is watching today, that this is a character-building season. Not a blip of one race, a full season. We kept pushing so hard. The engine came along really well, and I'm proud of what we achieved there. On the chassis side, there were more bad moments than good ones. But the good ones were spectacular, like a week ago in Brazil, and they made us feel how good it can be. Now we're just pushing forward for next year. It's rough, it's bad, it's okay to feel like this, but next year, we are back. But with his glass half full perspective, Toto would say that he isn't entirely confident that the team will be back in the front next season and compete for their 9th Constructors' Championship. I'm never confident. I'm a glass half empty guy, and kind of never believed that the job that we're doing is good enough. I'm not sure at all whether we can bounce back to a position where we compete for championships, because you need to acknowledge that the competition is strong. But we will do everything in our power, everything, to set our objectives high and try to reach them. But one may argue that Red Bull receiving less wind tunnel time due to them winning the title this season and the sporting penalty they received for breaching the cost cap last season, Mercedes is perfectly set up to make a comeback for next season. For those of you who aren't in the know, Red Bull was supposed to be allowed a total of 224 runs in their wind tunnel, but due to the penalty that they received, the team will only be allowed to do a total of 202 runs instead, which gives Mercedes 27% more wind tunnel time compared to Red Bull. But as much as they have the advantage to experiment, Toto believes that the cost cap is still a huge limiting factor for them to climb back up the standings. I think it's harder because you can't really invest more in order for the outcome to come quicker, said Toto. But I think how the aerodynamic regulations are designed and the penalty that they've gotten, it's 25% less wind tunnel, and that can have an effect. The way that the regulations, the ATR restrictions, have been set in place means that there are teams that are further back who can really make a big jump compared to the frontrunners. That's also the reason why we will see much closer championships in the future, because if you are last, you will have 40% more. So clearly, that is an advantage that you have to utilize. Is it a given that we can utilize it? Who knows? They, Red Bull, are a brilliant racing team. It will give them an extra motivation, and against Ferrari, it's 7%. But it's around marginal games, and we have been a bit closer to Ferrari in the last quarter of the season. Mercedes has reached the top of F1 through their innovation and bold designs, but with the new regulations, the FIA have been considerably strict about what teams come up with. As we all can remember, Mercedes introduced a new front-wing end plate design that was technically legal, but was ordered by the FIA to not be used. And in a recent press conference held by the FIA, head of single-seaters Nicolas Tombazis would clarify why the governing body had outlawed Mercedes' design, and say, obviously this year they were both legal. The regulations have changed on both the front and the rear in different ways to stop those solutions. Some of these things where we changed the rules are in that category, but that article, 3.2, wasn't intended that, okay, if you're smart and you have a solution, we're going to take it off the car immediately. It just gave an explanation about sometimes why we have to intervene with the regulations, but we've still done it via governance. We don't have the right to just say, we don't like this, let's ban it. And there you have it, guys. So, will Mercedes make a comeback next season and compete for the title? Let us know in the comments section below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't.